Hi everyone, welcome to Chinese Pod. My name's Fiona.
大家好，欢迎来到中文播客，我是方景。
You're watching an episode of
请问
In today's 请问 we're going to be tackling with three seemingly very similar direction words.
向、朝、往。
So one of our users requested that we shed a bit more light on their differences. Now there is an audio version of this particular question, but we thought we'd kind of update it, give you guys a video version, and give you some more examples on how they are different. Now, the reason that many of you might find these three words tricky is because that when we're talking about directions, they are indeed interchangeable, and in fact they're actually quite similar when we're talking about directions.
对，特别是向跟往。你说向前走、往前走、向右转、往右转，其实都是可以的。
So when you're talking about turning left, turning right, going forward, all three of these terms can be used with the exception of 朝, perhaps because it sounds a bit more formal, and we'll be talking about why that seems a bit awkward. I mean, there's a bit more of a general direction. So maybe you can say 朝北, 朝南, so go towards the north, go towards the south, where the direction's a bit, the target is a bit larger.
对，因为朝比较没有那个动作的感觉，但是向跟往都有一种要往那边走的那种动作的感觉。
So 向 and 往, both of these terms have a lot of action built into the word, right? There's a lot of implied action. When you say the word 向 or 往, there's always some kind of action that will happen. With 朝, less so. It's more kind of moving, facing towards that particular direction. Okay, now that we've talked about how they're similar, let's go into how they're different. And in fact, after you go through these examples, you'll realize that they're actually very different terms. Let's first look at the character 向。
因为这三个词其实它们都要跟动词放在一起用，因为它们是介词嘛。那所以我们就来看看它们跟什么样的动词在一起。最特别的第一个就是向，因为向都跟一种内向性的动词在一起。
Because 向、朝、往, all three of these are directional terms. They're always actually coupled with verbs. Now, the next question is then which verbs are these three terms most often coupled with? 向 has the clearest distinction, right? 向 is always coupled with inward verbs. 内向性的动词, so inward verbs. Now let's have a look at some examples. It sounds kind of technical now, but the examples make it very clear. So let's have a look at some 内向性, some inward verbs.
第一个就是买。
To buy, right? So that it's very clear the direction, something's coming towards you. 买,
那另外一个呢就是学。
To learn.
再来是借。
To borrow, right? It's coming this way.
还有收。
To receive. So all of these, see, they're all inward going. So 买, 学, 借, 收.
对。
And also there's one extra one as well, to ask for.
对。
要, right? So this also coming this way. So 内向性的动词, inward verbs.
对，所以除了这个左转右转啊，或是往前走啊这些以外，向常常是要跟这些把东西从别的地方拉过来这样感觉的动词放在一起。
So apart from using 向 in asking for directions or giving directions, 向 is most often coupled with verbs where the objects or the things, whether it be an abstract thing like learning or an actual thing, when things are coming towards you. So let's have a look at some examples.
好，比方说我向 Fiona 买一本书。
Okay, so Constance has bought a book from me. Did you notice I said from? 向 is often translated as towards, right? Going or turning or going towards that direction. But in fact, when you're using it with these verbs, what it actually means is from, right? Right. 我向 Constance 借一支笔. So I borrowed a pen from Constance.
或者是说我向李老师学中文。
Okay, so I'm learning Chinese from teacher Li.
那同学们如果上过一些课哦，可能会发现这几个例子，你也可以用跟来代替像。
Exactly. There might be some of you that are watching this now and being like, hey, I know, couldn't you use 跟? Exactly. These two are very similar in usage in these contexts. Now that we've looked at a very distinguishing feature of 像, so that it's always coupled with inward verbs, let's look at 朝 and 往 and see if we can kind of sort through and find some more distinguishing features for these two characters.
那我们先看往好了，往比较容易也比较常见哦。只要你要说去一个方向，你要告诉别人一个方向，不管是你要去还是你要走，甚至是说你要往哪里跑、往哪里跳、往哪里飞，你都是用往。
So let's first look at 往, right? This is kind of the easiest one of the three. When you're going in a clear direction, this is that destination you're getting to, you have a clear direction, you can use 往. And often 往 is coupled with some very action-related verbs like walking, going, swimming towards, or whatever, driving towards. These very clear verbs with clear actions, clear directions as well.
比方说我往前面看。
So I'm looking forward. 我往前面看, right? I have a clear direction. I'm looking straight ahead at you.
那第二个呢是这班飞机往北京飞。
Okay, so this plane is going towards Beijing.
那这里有一个重点是北京不是只是它的目的地，它也代表这个飞机要飞去的那个方向，所以我们用往。
So in this case, 这班飞机往北京飞. This plane is going in the direction of Beijing. Beijing might not be its only or final destination, but we know that it's clearly going towards the direction of Beijing.
对，那所以你常常会在车站看到车子上面会写往沈阳、往上海、往什么地方，说这个车是往这边去，所以告诉你一个方向，中间可能还会停别的站。
So this is most commonly seen at bus stops, train stations, when you want to figure out which direction this bus or train is going towards. There might be many stops in between, but you know it's going in that direction.
没错，那最后一个例子比较有点脏哦，我往地上吐了一口痰。
So we're going to give you a bit of a dirty example. So I've spit or I spat on the floor. 我往地上吐了一口痰。
那这个时候往那个地上是我吐痰的一个方向，就是去到那里，所以这是一个很清楚的一个方向的概念。
So this is the direction which I'm going to spit in.
所以这是地上。好。
Finally, let's look at 朝, this somewhat more formal, somewhat more abstract 朝. So what makes 朝 different to 往 and 向?
其实朝是一个，对，像我们刚刚讲，它是一个往比较大的方向去看朝。那另外一个呢，也因为这样，所以它表示一个目的。像我们刚刚说的，我往地上吐了一口痰，我也可以说我朝地上吐一口痰。但是这个时候地上有点像，意思是我的目的是那个地上。
So when you have a clear, so when you're going towards a general direction, right? Imagine, for example, on iPhone or on Google Maps or something, when you're heading towards a direction, there's that kind of like beacon that's kind of going like that. 方向, when you want to clear it, I'm turning right. This is the direction I'm going in. But 朝 is more like that like beacon, right? I'm going towards that general direction. So you can also say 我朝地上吐了一口痰, right? I've spat on the ground, but you're just spitting in that general direction.
所以这个朝其实是一个比较大的目标、大的方向，比较常听到我朝天上看了看。
Yeah, because it's a larger kind of object or larger thing that you're looking at. You often say, I'm looking towards the skies, right? 我朝天上看. Unless you're looking at something specific, like maybe a star in the sky, how would you say that?
我往那颗星星看了一下。
Yeah, so I'm looking at that star. I'm looking towards that star. But if you're just looking at the sky, something that's so vast, you would use 朝.
所以其实常常朝会跟着比较是一个 一个名字，一个地方，方向不一定是方向，可以是一个地方，比方说朝天上啊，还有我朝 Fiona 笑一笑。
So I'm smiling towards Fiona. I'm smiling towards that general direction. And as I mentioned before, 朝 is often paired with like northeast, southwest, right? Because these are larger, more general things that you're going towards.
那也像我们刚刚说的，朝没有那么大的动作性，所以如果你说中国人常常讲一个房子啊，坐北朝南，意思是这个房子的门是向着南边朝南，这时候我们绝对不会说坐北往南，因为往你要走到南边那样的意思。
And as we mentioned before, 朝 is more like you're facing towards certain things, whereas 向 and 往, there's action implied in that. So often when you're buying or renting a house, you'll see a little description at the bottom which way the house faces. So you can say, you might hear something like 坐北, to sit with your back to the north, 朝南, but the front of the house faces the south. In this instance, it would be very weird to use the other two because you're kind of talking about north and south as kind of general directions.
对。
Okay, now that we've talked about the differences between 向, 朝, 往, let's do a mini recap. 向, what was the key thing that was different between the other two?
它都跟内向性的动词买、学、收、要、借这些放在一起。
So it always goes with inward verbs, and in these cases, what it actually should be translated into is from, right? I'm learning from this teacher. I'm borrowing this pen from this person. Now let's look at 朝 and 往。
往的话，一定是有一个方向，它要告诉你一个方向，然后呢，一定有一个动作，往那边走，往那边去，往那边吐痰。
Okay, so 往 has a clear direction, and there's almost always an action that's implied, whether it's ongoing, the plane is already going towards that. I want to go towards that direction. And now finally, 朝. So it's more that you're facing, or I'm facing this person and smiling. My house faces south.
所以朝就比较没有那么大的动作的意思在里面。所以像看这种动词，你就可以说朝，你也可以说往，因为要看你讲的是方向还是目标。
Yeah, that was a great example. So when you're talking about you're looking at things, you're looking at towards or looking at certain things, 朝 would be the most obvious thing because there's less action implied in that. You're just looking towards the sky, you're looking towards the ground. But as we mentioned at the beginning, when you're giving directions or you're asking for directions, yeah, these three are probably interchangeable. But now you guys know how they are different.
对。
Okay, guys, we've given you a couple more examples in the lesson page, so do go check out those example sentences. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments or share them on our forum. We hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and we'll see you again next time. 再见。我们向你们挥手。
挥手。我朝你们笑。好阴森的感觉。